Hello, everybody. Welcome to what is this 237, I think. Um, can you believe we've been doing this for that long? Huh? So, I want to start. Years ago, I had a checklist I was going to read off before we start. Let me do this real quick. Okay, I had a checklist. I might start doing that again next week. We didn't have a theme this week. Because I didn't feel like that was going as well as it should have. So, I don't think I'm gonna do the theme. I think afterwards would be the best time to add that information to um the title, right? So like if we talk about endurance, which I'm thinking about talking about right now, and it ends up being the whole show being about endurance, then I'll put endurance up in the title somehow. Um, Anyway, there's a list of things that I wanted to start doing um, at the beginning of these things just to get started. Um, right now, I don't have that list in front of me, but I'm thinking about starting that back up next time. Thank you for being patient. Last week, I did have a gig in the morning, and I think I told you guys that I had a gig in the morning. That meant that my dialysis had to be switched to the afternoon. And that's why we didn't have our Q and A last week. I did want to mention that the tonalization method book, not to be confused with the tonalization study books, the tonalization method book is almost done. We are in the editing stage. I've edited it once so far. I like to edit two more times before I send it to uh, my wife so that she can take a look at it. Um, and yes, so what is that book? That book is going to be, hello, Karen. Nice to see you. That book is going to be an explanation of how to apply the overall concept of tonalization to your practice. Once again, I was telling a friend last night, I had a gig last night. I was telling a friend last night that this book, just like all my other books, was not meant to be so long. It's almost 100 pages. It's almost 100 pages. I think we're at 87 pages right now. Of course, that's the little, 6 by 9 book. And the font is not real small. Okay, the reason I do the bigger font is because I do get, it's not to make it longer pages. Yeah, I do get a lot of people who are older that struggle with the smaller print. Um, so I've been taking that into consideration. That said, there's even people now that with the one range book complain about the size of the text, and it's really not that small. But I get it though. I get it because as you get older, it's hard to read. You know. Anyway, anybody got any questions that we can get started with? Let me tell you this while you're typing. The reason I said maybe we'll talk about endurance is because I had last night a bad endurance episode. And, normally I wouldn't share that with you. Um, but it's important for me because of what I teach. And I teach this stuff to you guys, right? It's important for me. And what's ironic is that it was my first time meeting the trombone player last night, and the leader of the band introduced me and says, "This guy is a chops guru." Hello, Akon. I don't know how to say that. Um, Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. Um, so he had just introduced me as the chops guru. Angela, that's right. I remember now. Thanks for joining us, Angela. And so this guy just introduced me as a chops guru, and then I had a once it was just one song, but in the past this would have never happened. And indeed, uh it doesn't happen. Well, I think what happened last night is that because of the dialysis and I've had a terrible headache for 2.5 days now. I don't get headaches. Um, but yes, I was playing the gig last night with a headache. The band, I mean the stage volume, not stage volume. What do you call that? The crowd noise. Let's call it crowd noise. The crowd noise for the party was so loud that I have ringing ears right now. Hello, Seppo. Nice to see you. So, yeah, thank you, Angela. So, Angela says, that's awful. I am sorry to hear that, right? So, yes, it wasn't my best of nights. And I've always said, long before I got sick, I've always said, because I knew this to be true, even in the 90s, I don't, ever since I switched to what we call the physical trumpet pyramid. Now, you don't have to buy the physical trumpet pyramid book to get the physical trumpet pyramid books. Um, all of my routines are based on the physical trumpet pyramid. That's why they have pyramids on the cover, right? And I've always said that ever since I switched to a pyramid structure in my routine, I don't have bad days. Whether I practice or I don't practice, or um, practice too much, practice not enough, I don't have bad days. The only time I have bad days is when the rest of my body is not right. That's the only time now, and I've been living this way now for what? What is that, 30 years? Over 30 years? And so, yes, I had one song last night. He said, Eddie, I need you to play first. I played first. And it was fine for the first, this was more than halfway through the gig. It's a 3.5 hour brass quartet gig. Brass quartet. And here's the thing. Here's how endurance works. The bigger the ensemble, the less need for endurance. The smaller the ensemble is, the more you have to have greater endurance, because the smaller the ensemble is, the less rest you get. Right? And I was fine with the quartet, even playing some of the first parts. I was fine. I was fine. I was fine. I was fine. And don't get me wrong, I did get tired, but not tired enough to put my horn down or whatever. And last night, with all that noise, and because you know what's wrong with playing when there's noise, is that you play louder. You can't help it. It's just like when you are uh, having a conversation in a noisy room, and then all of a sudden the noise stops and you're screaming. You didn't know you were screaming, but when the noise stopped, you realized, hey, I've been screaming all this time. And it's the same thing that happens to us when we are playing loud. I mean, not playing loud, but playing in a loud room. And that can either be, by the way, stage volume or crowd noise. Last night for us, it was crowd noise. Our first set, almost nobody was there. That first set was beautiful. See, here at home, I play all day. I've got the endurance to play all day. Um, but if the volume goes up like that, you have no control. You can't stop it. Otherwise, you can't hear yourself. You can't stop it. It's just as bad with uh, stage volume. You know, it made me so happy to see Wynton Marsalis. I don't remember what interview it was, or if it was in a magazine or whatever. And he was talking about how when he started using the old timers in his band, like the Carnegie Hall band or whatever that is, um, they started chewing him out for like saying, "Why are you playing so loud?" And I was so happy to hear that. And he that's the thing about him is he respects the old timers, as most people should, right? Not most people. I mean, as everybody should. Um, the old people are the backbone of our societies. That's never changed. People say that it's changed. It's not changed. It's not changed. We've just become terrible people. But the truth of how important it is to respect your elders, that's not the kind of thing that changes with a new era, right? So anyway, that was nice for me to see that. Um, but yes, when we play on a stage that has all amplified instruments, we're going to play louder. I have students that say, "Oh, my endurance is great at home." Then I get to the gig and I don't have any endurance. 9 times out of the 10, that it's a volume issue. 9 times out of 10, it's a volume issue. Either the crowd noise is too loud or the people you're playing with are too loud. Now, you can do stuff. This is kind of why I'm talking about this. You can do things so like the spider long tones. By the way, I'm supposed to announce that we've got the spider long tones now published on our website. It's the only place to get it because it's a module, and I'm not putting modules up on the other websites anymore. So let me get that real quick and put the link. Okay. Now, if you're going to use these spider long tones, I strongly encourage you to follow the directions, right? I'm putting the link in there now. This kind of exercise can help you with your endurance on the loud side. So anyway, to finish my point, I'll get to Angela's question. Um, Last night was tough for me. I wasn't feeling good. I had that headache. I also felt kind of sick. And so, when I was in the hospital, by that time, I had gone over 9 months without playing a gig. Well, without playing loud gigs. That was the biggest thing that and I didn't want to have to walk so far because I was having trouble with that. Um, so, um, so I hadn't had a loud gig in over 9 months. And I was afraid that when I started taking these gigs again, that I wouldn't have the endurance for them because I already knew about this, right? I already knew about this playing loud thing. Now, with most bands, it's okay because it's not like a brass quartet. Brass quartet compared to, let's say, a top 40 band. The top 40 band, you get enough rest. You get enough rest, And that's the thing, is the difference between that song that I had trouble on and all the rest of the songs was that there was no rest. And if it had happened when we were at the beginning and everything was real soft, I probably would not have had any trouble with it. Not because it was at the beginning, but because there was no crowd noise. Anyway, so that's what I have to say. If you guys have questions about how to build endurance, let me know, and I'll try to answer your questions. Um, anyway, so Angela says, "Do you also play in churches?" Yes, I do. Um, I don't understand how people hire in the churches. I really don't. Um, I do know that they have that. A lot of them have that platform where, and maybe a lot of them go straight to the platform and are not, not even interested in people that are not on that platform. I don't know what the platform is called. I don't even know that I would sign up. I play every week at my church if I don't have another gig. That's kind of a cool situation because um, our pastor is the one who plays piano and sings. And then I just play harmony to his singing. And it's all hymns. I like the fact that they sing hymns. That's not I wouldn't choose a church for that reason. I wouldn't say, um, "Oh, you're not singing hymns, I'm not going to your church." I wouldn't say that, but I do prefer the hymns. Um, but yes, I do play churches. Don't get me wrong. Um, the guy that I worked with last night is probably hiring me for the most church work out of everybody else right now. The problem with his gigs, they're all in the woodlands. Um, so Angela says, I run out of steam after 12 beats. I get so mad. So yeah, that's a thing that when are you a beginner? I know that you told me already. I don't remember. I apologize for that. Angela says, that's amazing that you hung in there to perform under that condition. Well done. Well, it's the job, right? It's either that or don't get paid. Um, and I think that's where most of my jobs come from. You know, you could. I say that it's because of the routine, and that's true. It is true. But the loud chops are from the many years of gigs with loud bands, and you don't quit because then you don't get paid. They would never call you back again if you had to stop and like what I did last night. Angela says that's what I would like to play at my church as a volunteer. That's nice. I volunteer at my church too. I'm not ready yet though. Okay. She says I am a baby trumpet player. Yes. Karen says my endurance is pretty inconsistent. Hope it will improve over time. I keep plugging it. I've heard you play with a lot of endurance sometimes, but you're right. Sometimes and that's something I'm not so sure I understand, right? If it was me, I would be asking what's different from, and that's how I developed my method, right? Is I took those things that didn't make sense. Why sometimes this and why sometimes that, and I analyzed it and I figured it out, and then that's what led to my method, and really how I teach too. But that where the endurance is extremely inconsistent. Now, um, This thing about the volume can be the answer for that kind of inconsistency. So, like, if the volume that you practice at home, and this is, by the way, why I gave you guys, not you, Karen, but why I put the link up here for the spider long tones, right? Um, I put that link there because that exercise is also great for endurance. It's great for endurance. Now, the reason I put it up in the first place, boy, my head hurts. Oof. The reason I put it up in the first place is because it's great for increasing your range. Now, I only did up to B flat. Now, why did I do that? Because once you get past the top of the staff, your range should start picking up without having to develop anything physical like that. Once you get over that speed bump, it should all work out. Um, um, anyway, but yes, that same exercise can help you with the volume stuff because that's what we're doing. I'm going to say it one more time. If you do, by chance, get that PDF, read the instructions. I put a lot of effort into the instructions. And so, yeah, read it and make sure you're doing it correctly because I have some students already that um, were doing it, the the long tone. They're doing the long tune, but not so. Like the one student says, I did it, and I didn't feel anything afterwards. Well, when you're done with the spider long tones, the one with the dynamics in it, um, you should feel tired. And if it didn't make you tired, you either need to do a higher one or a longer one. The whole point is well, not the whole point. The real point is to go louder and softer, but that's one of the benefits of that exercise. It can help with your endurance. So anyway, let's read some more of these. Seppo says, why playing long, tough passages in a symphony orchestra on a C trumpet takes more effort than playing lead in a big band on B flat. Oh man. Um, you know, it could just be. There's a number of possibilities, right? It could just be that there's the amount of resistance in the C trumpet or like what mouthpiece you're using or whatever is is a higher amount of resistance on the C trumpet. It could just be that. It could also be mental. In other words, maybe you have more. Now, I don't like using this word because there's so many people teaching terrible stuff about body tension. Terrible, terrible, terrible. We've talked about this before. When I talk about body tension, it's not what those guys are talking about. It's not the same thing. What I'm saying is not the same thing as what they're saying. But in this case, playing the C trumpet in an orchestral setting could be mental, and it could the way that mental stuff manifests would be with less endurance because of the fact that you got greater um, what would you call that? No, I don't want to say greater demand, but I think this is a farce, by the way. I think It's completely cultural and not real. That the standards are higher. So we care more. If something slips on a big band stage, it's not that big of a catastrophe. But if it happens in the orchestra, we care more. We shouldn't care more because that caring is what causes us to make mistakes. I know that sounds weird. Um, I have oftentimes said, maybe not here, I have often said that caring should happen at home, and when you get on stage, you should just enjoy yourself. I tell people I have the luxury of not caring, and I mean this wholeheartedly. I have the luxury of not caring because I cared so much when I was at home practicing. Think of what that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde attitude does to your performances. At home, you're Dr. Jekyll. You're trying to get it all right. You're not letting mistakes slide. You're putting the pressure on yourself to do the best that you can do. That's at home, not on the stage. Imagine that you live your life like that and every practice session is serious. And you have to make yourself not stomp your feet. You have to make yourself not groan and scream. You have to make yourself not, we're talking about your practice time. You have to make yourself not have a temper tantrum because you care so much that when it's not right, your standards are that's not good enough. That's how practice should be. Instead, a lot of people don't have that serious attitude at home. They go to the performance, and that's when they decide, oh, this is important. I'm performing now. What a disaster. What a complete disaster. When you do it backwards like that, you don't have the skills to pull that off. The skills come from being serious at home. There's no amount of trying. There's no amount of quote unquote trying hard to get the music right that will fix stuff that you did wrong in your practice session. You can't make mistakes in your practice session and expect those mistakes to be gone when you get to the stage. That's not how the human mind works. So we exercise very, very high standards in the practice room. And then when we get to the stage, and the reason we're talking about this is because Sippo asked about being on stage with the orchestra. There's a culture of seriousness associated with the orchestra, a culture of seriousness that is detrimental to your musicianship. I know what I'm saying now sounds blasphemous to educated musicians. It sounds like blasphemy. I had one woman tell me, surely you don't care how well you play on stage. Surely you don't really mean that. Surely you wouldn't teach your students that. She just was in disbelief. That's how much that culture of seriousness, how prevalent that culture is. Heaven forbid we should go on stage and have a good time. Huh? And I can't say simple that that's what's happening with you, but it's those kind of things. Remember where what happens with endurance. Um, when we're not 100% focused, and I don't mean focused in the sense that other people mean it, right? When I'm talking about focused to a degree where you know where it starts to affect just how firm your lips are. We're talking, talking about that body tension stuff. We talked about body tension, I think, in this Q and A. I established that body tension is caused by conflicting thoughts. Just being on stage with your mind surrounded in that culture can give you those conflicting thoughts, which will automatically give you the body tension. And I'll tell you this too, no amount of trying to relax is going to fix that because it's happening up here. Okay? So that's what I mean by focus. I don't know what else to call it. Um, when we have conflicting thoughts, we're not focused. When we say to ourselves on stage, this has to go well, we're not focused. We've got that thought. This better go well. And playing the music are almost opposite thoughts. And yes, you're going to get by having a desire to play well. That's think about it. That's not a musical thought. When you think to yourself, this has to go well, that's not a musical thought. Musical thoughts are musical thoughts. Musical thoughts are your phrasing, your breathing. And I don't mean physically breathing. I'm talking about where do you breathe? Uh, Their vibrato, all those are musical thoughts. Wanting to do well is not a musical thought. So when people, this is why I've always said, it's the most ambitious ones that have the biggest problem because they desire so badly to do well. And the irony is that they don't apply that to themselves at home. So, yes, you can have body tension, which will make your endurance go down. We don't see that as much with the big band stuff because, in fact, let me tell you this. A friend of mine, I say friend of mine, we're not like best buds or anything like that, but when he was still here, John DeWitt was first trumpet player in the Houston Symphony, and we got to know each other. Um, and I heard, now he didn't tell me this directly, but I heard that he would always warm up for the symphony, um, playing jazz stuff. Why? Because the jazz stuff would calm him. It would help him relax, so to speak. Right? So yes, there is a that's I know I spent a lot of time on Seppo's question, but that's how I see it. Your endurance can be affected more mentally than you think. And that's why, what I was actually very disappointed with myself last night because I haven't been practicing. And there's a tendency to say, well, that's what you get. You haven't been practicing. But I think even in like 3 years ago when I was still practicing full steam, I think that what happened last night would have still happened. Even when I was at the top of my endurance, I think last night would have still happened. Under those conditions, it would have still happened. And how do I know that? Because I've played other gigs and it didn't go like that. That's what I was saying about being in the hospital. I had gone that long. And the truth is, even though I've gone so long without practicing like I used to, my endurance is still there. So, anyway, it's not a straightforward thing. It really isn't a straightforward thing. That's why you have to experiment and try stuff out. All right, moving on. Let's see. How old were you? This is Angela. How old were you when you started? I read music really well, so at least that I have that going for me. I was, I think, 10. In fact, I know I was 10 because that's how I figure out how long it's been since I've started playing. I'm 61 now, so I've been playing for 51 years, half of a decade. Let's see, where am I? I have a Bach B flat trumpet. Well, that's nice. Those are nice instruments. Um, Mr. Derek says, I believe that's Mr. Derek. These screen names are hard to remember. Mr. Lewis, when you are in a gig and if you were to run out of endurance before it's over, what do you do? Do you take it down an octave? Resorting to excessive pressure is not good, of course. Right? That's right. Um, Let me tell you what. So the nature of my endurance right now is that if I have just 2 measures rest, it all comes back. So I have this thing that I do to squeeze every bit of playing out of my endurance that I can get. When there's more than one beat of rest, I pull the horn all the way off my lips. Between doing the routine and this practice of, because those routines are hard, you guys know that. Those routines will demand more of you than any gig ever will, except for the volume. So, between practicing those routines and this convention where you take the horn off of your lips whenever you can, that can give you a huge boost in the endurance. So, I started getting tired last night halfway through the gig, but I didn't have that crash and burn like I did on that one song because those songs had measures of rest that I could take the horn off my lips. Does that make sense? So, let's see here. I have a question. If you can play a B flat trumpet real well, could you also play a piccolo and natural trumpet? That's from Angela. Um, yeah, I would say yes. Now keep in mind that the piccolo trumpet's written range is an octave lower. Okay? That sounds, when you wrap your head around that, it's kind of confusing. The piccolo's written range is an octave lower. So when you're playing a low C, it's the same as a C in the staff. So what happens when you play piccolo trumpet is that it cuts off all the low notes. It doesn't give you high notes, but it cuts off all the low notes. So if your range is only up to C in the staff, then on the B flat trumpet, then on the piccolo trumpet, you don't have any range at all. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Next question from Angela. Oh no, she just says when I get frustrated, I just take a break. There you go. That's a good way to approach it. Karen says that's why I joined the second band. It's more laid back and I get to play more interesting stuff generally. Though I did get nervous when I filled in a solo part. Oh, that's nice. That's fun. Not my usual. I'm glad you got to take a solo. Wonderful. I think you're going to end up doing a lot more of that. I really do. Angela says, God bless you. Well, thank you. I am 58 years young. Okay. All right. And that is young, right? We're youngsters still. All right. Karen says, I think it's amazing that you can do so well even when you aren't feeling well. Oh, it wasn't always like that. Keep in mind, keep in mind that the first, how many years is that? If I start my career in 88 when I moved to Houston, I played professionally before that, but I oftentimes say my career started in 88. Um, and what was the year of the divorce? It was, I'm going to say 2005. So 88 to 2005, there's 3, there's 10, and then, so for the first let's say 18 years, for the first 18 years of my career, we were well beneath the poverty line. I'll say that again. For the first 18 years of my career, me and my ex, and maybe that's why she's my ex. Huh? Me and my ex um, were well beneath the poverty line. I didn't know that at the time. I never really thought to look what was poverty. It was only afterwards looking back. And I won't go into why I looked back. But afterwards, I saw that we never came close to the poverty line. So when I had a gig that paid, I had to make that gig work. I think the worst that I ever had, I don't get headaches, but when with this gig last night, it reminded me of the gig I had with Canario. Um, I think Canario is dead now. They call him El Canario. Jose Alberto. I had a gig with him. He's a famous salsero, famous salsa player. And I'll put a link to his wiki page. I believe he passed away. No, he's 66. He has not passed away. Okay. And he's not that much older than me. How is that? Wow, I didn't know that. So here's a link to El Canario's wiki page. I had a gig with him and I had what you could call a migraine. It wasn't a migraine before I started the gig, but it hurt bad and it hurt worse and worse and worse. You know what happens with the salsa music is you're playing high and you're tonguing. You're playing high, you're playing loud, and you're tonguing. I can do two of those without too much press, too much back pressure. And the tonguing. Oh my. I would play a phrase and then bend over, let the blood rush back through my head again. And you know what's funny about that? That was a terrible, terrible night for me. It was the first time I ever met the piano player, who is now a good friend of mine, Gilbert Cedeno. Based on what he heard that night, he invited me to, I guess, audition for the band that I would often tell people was the first highly professional band that I had ever worked with. That's how I used to say it. It was the Salsa America was the name. The band did half English music, half Spanish music. And within the English music, we would do jazz, we would do pop top 40, we would do that kind of stuff. On the Spanish side, we did salsa, we did boleros, we did a couple mariachi things, stuff like that. Cumbias, salsa, merengue. So I was with that band for about 10 years. It was the first band to pay that way, pay well enough. Um, and see, the thing is, I played well enough on that night when I was having those migraine type headaches. I don't think they were migraines, but when you already have a baseline headache and then you play high, loud, and tongue a lot, ooh, it was an extremely painful gig. But by that time, I had figured out how to keep going, no matter what. And it was good enough that that guy, Gilbert Sedano, that guy, Gilbert Sedano, hired me or invited me to the audition um, for the band that was going to pay my bills for the next 10 years. Sunstorm, that's Mr. Derek says, yes, it's him. Seppo says, thank you for your answer. Even if I got a very good C trumpet, I still do not like the sound C trumpet produce because those are so bright and it hurts the ear. It is an instrument I always approach with seriousness. The thing is, if you don't like the sound, that is also, if you don't like the sound of the horn you're playing, that is also one of those non musical thoughts. That is also something that will cause you on the mental side of your musicianship to play with more body tension. I have a story that goes with that, but I don't think I have time to tell it right now. Um, I've told it before, I think, on the Q and A. We need to have a horn. So I used to have a C trumpet. I sold it s- specifically for the reason that you just mentioned. I didn't like how it sounded. And I made the mistake. There's a lot of horns I won't try because they're too expensive. There's no way I could ever afford some of these instruments like a Monet or whatever. There's no way. And if I did have that money, I'd buy a car. Right? so um so I would never play them on that because I would hate to have what happened with the C trumpet. I played a great C trumpet one time. I wish I could buy one. They keep going up in price. I still don't have one. Um I've told you about this before. What a beautiful instrument. It's a Blackburn C trumpet. And last time we were at a convention, I decided I'd go to the Blackburn booth just to see if it was as good as I remembered. And sure enough, Everything I remembered. I only tried the one instrument for 5 or 10 minutes. Everything I remembered about that 5 or 10 minutes turned out to be confirmed at the last convention that I went to. Oh, Angela says, I'm happy that my range is the G above the staff. That's wonderful. That's, some people struggle with that. She says, I'm blessed that I can afford to play as a volunteer and not worry about making a living as a musician. I just play as a hobby because I want to play for the church. That's wonderful. The reason why they call it amateur is actually based on, I believe, the French word for love, right? You do it out of the love you have for it. Karen says, I'm older than you, Angela. You are young. Angela says, I'm sure that you play well. I love playing trumpet and I'm doing well with it so far. Hopefully by next year I can play for my church. If you've got a range all the way up to G already, you're pretty close to that goal already. Angela says, see trumpets sound amazing at a church service during Christmas and Easter. I think what you're seeing there is that for a lot of the churches, will hire the orchestral guys. When I say orchestral guys, they're not necessarily in an orchestra, but they've been training orchestrally. And yes, on the C trumpet, um, those guys, I don't particularly like it. Um, my what I like from a classical player today has changed, and I don't like that. So the way I like to describe the modern orchestral players is that their sound is angelic. And if I'm feeling like hearing some angelic trumpet playing, that's what I would listen to. And it's beautiful. I'm not saying it's not beautiful. But what I am saying is that it's almost not human. Does that make sense? It's almost not human. Well, I got the opportunity to hear some of those angelic people play alternating with Bud Herseth. And I would not use the word angelic to describe Bud Herseth's sound, especially live like that on a recital hall. And I play more like, and I don't say this to brag, and you guys have never heard me say this because I don't say it, but it's relevant now. My whole career, people have said that I have Bud Herseth's embouchure. Um, I have Bud Herseth's sound. I've had people tell me that my whole career. The last one to say that to me was Armando Gatala, who is no slouch himself. The last lesson I ever took was with Armando Gatala, and he said I had a Bud Herseth embouchure. So, I'm not saying, I'm not telling you that as a way to brag. A lot of people would say that to brag. I'm not bragging, um, but it helps to point out how different my playing is, and it's certainly not angelic, right? I would not use that word to describe my own playing. And what do I mean when I say angelic? The purity is so high, and everything about what they do is just about perfect. It doesn't sound like it's coming from a human person. That's just my opinion. I know that would probably, it's sort of like a awkward compliment, right? On the one hand, I'm saying that what they do is very perfect and it's very clean and in tune and all that stuff. On the other hand, I'm saying I don't like it. I would much rather hear Bud Hurst. There are some types of music that work better with that more angelic sound. Like, um, this is a weird thing to say, but there's a piece by, let's see here, um, Elite Syncopations by Joplin. Elite Syncopations is perfect for that angelic sound. Something like that. It really does make a difference. But I'm not interested in that. And I don't want to play that way. I won't teach that way. I will, um, if someone tells me they want to make an orchestra, I will tell them I can help you get in the right ballpark, but you'll have to go study with someone else to get over that finish line. And it would probably be better if you want to make an orchestra, if that's what you want to do for your living. I'm not saying if you want to just play in an orchestra, like a community orchestra like that. Um, I'm not talking about that. I can teach people to do that. But if you want to make this your living, the what they're looking for now is something I don't offer. And I'm just honest about that. I'm honest about that. That's not something I offer. Um, it's sort of like what we were talking about. If you don't like your sound, right? I don't like that sound. I don't like that sound, that overly pure sound. I don't like it. It's not honest. It's not real. I'm talking about the way I perceive it, right? Um, and that's to me, everything in my life is about honesty and not being fake. Like the beard is part of that. And so many things, like especially in the music stuff. There's stuff that's standard that you're supposed to do when you make a recording. I don't do most of that. The only fake thing I do, the only fake thing that I do in my recordings is to add some reverb. That's just one thing that but yeah, that's about the only fake thing that I do. I don't add compression. I don't do a weird EQ. What you hear in my recordings is the real me. So, which other trumpet player's sound do I like the most? For the classical stuff, my favorite sound, and he's also my favorite player, is Bernard Kratzer. Most of you have never heard of him. Let me see if I'm spelling his name right. Oops. Let me try that again. He's got a. I've read this page a few times before. Okay, let me give you guys the. This guy is by far my favorite classical trumpet player. I'm gonna put the link to his bio in the chat. I really like his sound. I really, really, really like. Yes, he is on my. Karen asks, is he on your website listing list? The problem is that there's not much to hear. I have CDs that I bought that he's on. Um, Amazing stuff, really. And let me see. Let me see if I can find his CDs. I see 4 on Discogs. I'll put the link for Discogs on here. Yeah, for someone who's as good as he is, I don't understand why he doesn't have a lot more recordings. So it's kind of hard. I would strongly recommend. Let me do an Amazon search real quick. Yeah, I don't see it even on Amazon. That's just. Oh, here it is. This is one. This is such a gorgeous CD. Let's see if it's still in stock. Yes, it is. Look at that. Such a wonderful CD. Oh, the link is too long. Let me shorten the link. Oh, wait. No, there we go. Nope, it's too long. The Amazon stuff, you can cut out a lot of the search queries in the where it says ref, you just cut out everything after that. So let me put that in there. That's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful CD. All right, so we're out of time. Maybe I can answer one more question before we stop. Did you say your spider long tones are only available in PDF? Yes, that's right. It's not long enough to be a book. Okay, it's not long enough to be a book. At least not on my standards. So, all right. Well, nice chatting with you guys. I hope you got something out of it. I do have a lesson. Thank you, Seppo. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Angela. We'll see you next time. God bless you all and have a wonderful weekend.